Hello everyone, this is going to be the patch 14.2 tier list. This was the tier list that we ended up with on the last patch on 14.1. There have been quite a few changes, including the hotfix changes, that kind of shifts this list around a little bit. So let's get into it, shall we? Also, if you do enjoy the content, please subscribe and check out the Patreon if you want to, and let me know if I forgot any champions in the comments, because I do tend to do that, but I will respond to comments when people point it out. So the first change that everyone is going to be expecting is the Fizz nerfs. His damage has been nerfed, his AP ratio on Q got nerfed, and his AP ratio on W got nerfed. That's going to take him down into the S tier. I still think Fizz is very, very good. He's still incredibly good with items. He's still very strong because he can just go Lichbane first item or Storm Surge first item. He doesn't need the CDR that Hourglass gave him last season either. So he's been an overall really, really big winner of these item changes. So he's still going to be seeing a lot of play, and he's still going to be incredibly strong. And I might have a commentary coming out on him in a little bit if I manage to make it happen. Next, we have Echo, and although Echo hasn't been changed, I think I misjudged the strength that he has with the really early item spikes of being able to go Rocket Belt into Lichbane. You are incredibly strong on those two items, and Rocket Belt is also pretty cheap, so you can get it faster than most mages in the mid lane, which just allows you to get on your spike. So I'm actually going to put Echo up into the S tier as well. He might actually jump all the way up into the OP tier. I'm not entirely sure yet. Now next we have my queen, Ahri. Also, I forgot to mention, this is supposed to be a tier list for lower MMR players. I know some people were commenting about it on the last video. I'm sorry, it is for lower MMR players, usually diamond and under, and then this is what I'm aiming for with this list. But yeah, Ahri. She got an E buff. Her E is now 2 seconds lower cooldown, which is quite nice when it comes to weaving in and out of fights. People have discovered that going Malignance on her is pretty good. You can go Malignance into Cosmic Drive, or Malignance into just straight up a Death Cap, or an Hourglass, or Morellonomicon, or a Banshee. So people discovering that Malignant's first item is pretty good is quite nice. You might also be able to do some Liandry stuff on her if you really feel the need to. But yeah, I think I'm going to pop Ahri up into the A tier. I think I underrated her last patch, and I think I didn't really think about Malignance being able to be good on her. So I'm going to bump her up a little bit. Next, we have Annie, and I think I just underrated Annie very heavily last patch. A lot of people were saying it in the comments as well, that I should have Annie a little bit higher, and I think that is justified. I didn't really think that she would be able to play a build that does as much DPS as the old Liandry's, but she apparently still can with Malignance into Rylai's Liandry's. She's apparently still just as good at shredding tankier team compositions, and also obviously is very nice with Protobelt into Storm Surge now, so I think she deserves an A tier. She might even deserve an S tier. Just because lower MMR's Annie is really, really nice. But I'm going to keep her in the A tier for now, see what happens. Gragas also got changed. He got some cooldown reduction on his ult, and he got some base stat buffs on his health and his armor, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to keep him in the S tier counter pick, but I really hope that this leads more people to play Gragas as a counter. He's incredibly good against a lot of the champions that are very prevalent in the meta right now, such as Fizz, such as Talon, such as Echo, such as Akali. He's very, very good against these champions that dash in, because he just becomes such a brick wall, and he can cancel all of their dashes, right? You can play full AP on him, and you can play tank on him, depending on what you really need for the team composition, right? So I'm going to keep him in the S tier counter pick section. Veigar. This champion, I think, is really, really good for lower MMRs. I saw Skillcap did a tier list, and they put him in the C tier, which just doesn't feel right to me, you know? He just got a health buff of 30, which obviously doesn't matter that much, but I think when people realize that going Archangel's Rocket Belt Death Cap on Veigar is incredibly good with Predator and Ingenious Hunter, people are going to start realizing that this champion is actually not terrible. Now, is he going to be played at the higher end of the ladder and in pro play? Probably not, right? Because he has a lot of clear weaknesses in the laning phase specifically, and the game is quite fast right now. But at the lower end of the ladder, you can usually scale for free, which means that Veigar is a lot better. His biggest weakness at the lower end of the ladder is usually being able to catch people in fights. It's hard to navigate him in fights, and it's hard to use his cage, right? You can overcome that by just running Predator and Protobelt. And with Ingenious Hunter, they're so low cooldown that you can quite consistently catch people. I'm going to keep him in the A tier, but I think I'm really onto something here. Rumble, he's been nerfed pretty hard, so he's going to go down into the B tier. I think the nerfs are obviously intended to kill Rumble top lane, but I also think with the champions that are kind of coming up into the meta now in the mid lane, such as Corki, Veigar, Swain, Vladimir, these sorts of champions, they do quite well against Rumble. The control mage champions are quite good against him, mostly because, well, he wins it early game, but lower end of the ladder, right? Early game doesn't matter as much, so I don't think his early strength is enough to justify the weaknesses that he's going to have now during fights after the nerfs. Twisted Fate got changed as well. I'm going to have to wait and see a little bit how this affects Twisted Fate. I think this is mainly a buff to AD Twisted Fate, which, if anyone knows me, I love playing AD Twisted Fate. I think it's a lot of fun. I am very bad at it, but I think AD Twisted Fate is a lot of fun. I'm going to keep him in the S tier, but obviously, when a champion gets a new build, it is very good for them because now you have more utility, right? You have more breadth of what you can go for. It's the same as Ahri. The reason Ahri was good was because you had 3 builds that you could go for that all did different things. You get a lot more flexibility, which is obviously fantastic. Well, now it also becomes a skill to know when you need to build AD Twisted Fate and when you need to build AP Twisted Fate. And I think that's important to learn as well. So definitely look into that and figure out what works for you. But I think Twisted Fate stays in the S tier. Now, a champion that I forgot to rate last time was Karma. I think Karma is going to slot straight into the S tier. She recently got some damage buffs on this patch on her Q. She got a 20% AP ratio buff on her Q, and she got a pretty big E buff as well, if I'm not mistaken, which is obviously massive for Karma. The build on her at the moment, by the way, is Malignance. Get Malignance first item, and your ult has very, very short cooldown, so you can just kind of spam it. It's very good when you have champions like Xin Zhao in the jungle, who's also very prevalent in the meta right now, but it is very, very easy to play, and trust me, even though it's super lane dominant as a champion, it is also very strong in team fights, especially if you use your Alt Q and then Alt E. Karthus is getting some buffs as well, but I don't think these buffs are quite big enough to launch him out of the A tier, so I'm going to keep him here. I think Karthus is very heavily underutilized in the mid lane. He's quite good against a lot of these control mage champions, especially at the lower end of the ladder. Mostly because how many times have you seen a Karthus go 0-2 in lane and then absolutely 1v9 the game anyway because he just gets to deal so much damage and he gets to farm? Well, that's the thing about low elo, right? Karthus gets to scale for free and he gets to 1v9 the game regardless of how bad he does in lane. So I would highly, highly recommend people check him out. I think more people should try to play Karthus mid lane, and you might find that you like him as well. He has a very, very nice style, a very, very fluid style, I think. I quite enjoy playing him, at least. Now, Oriana. I heavily underrated this champion, especially considering this tier list is aimed at the lower end of the ladder. I think for pro play, Oriana, the only reason she was really played at all is because you saw Xin Zhao and you saw Nocturne. People understood that Oriana Nocturne was a very broken combo. If, for those unfamiliar, if you put your ball on Nocturne and he started flying in with his ult, you could ult at Oriana and it was impossible to dodge. Like, you could do it from basically infinite range and the Oriana ult would always hit, which is obviously just broken, right? You have a free ball delivery. But for the lower end of the ladder, where that combo is probably not happening as frequently, I honestly think she does deserve a B tier at the very least. I don't think she is quite down in the D tier. With that being said, might as well play Syndra, the two queens of playing with balls, in the B tier. Mostly just because I think I underrated them a little bit too much. They're not too terrible, the items. I thought Luden's Companion would be considerably worse, but Oriana can also build Archangels. Syndra is obviously stuck with Luden's Companion, and it feels kind of bad now that her second item in Storm Surge got nerfed. Oriana has a little bit more depth, so I think Oriana is a tiny bit better, and I also just think Oriana is better as a champion because she has more utility. I also think I underrated Tristana. I think Tristana deserves to go straight back into the A tier. I have kept Tristana in the A tier for almost a full season of doing tier lists, and I think she deserves to be there. She's incredibly good. She pushes the lane and she scales incredibly well. She does everything that you really want at the lower end of the ladder. The only problem that I have with her is she's an AD carry in mid lane. Not a lot of mid laners are comfortable playing that in team fights. If you are an AD carry player and you do want to try to pick up mid lane, give Tristana a shot without a doubt. She's probably going to be an OP tier for you. But the general population of mid lane, I don't think are too comfortable playing AD carries in fights because we're used to playing mages or assassins, right? AD carries are a little bit unusual in the way that you have to position. But Tristana does everything that you really want. Go Kraken Slayer into Naafiri on her and you're going to see very, very good results. Just like you did before the item change. Yeah, she does everything that you really want. She just pushes the wave and she scales very, very well because obviously she's an AD carry with insanely long range. So yeah, play her. Play her if you need an AD threat on your team. That's what I'm gonna say. She's probably the best AD threat on this list. Which leads me to the next point, Talon. I think Talon needs to go down a little bit. I think he's still probably one of the better lethality users. I might even put him down into the B tier. I just don't think he's that good. I think I kind of overreacted to how good he would be on this new season. He seems kind of underwhelming, I can't really lie. Wei got some buffs as well, but I think I'm right putting him in the B tier. I think that is kind of where he belongs at the lower end of the ladder. I think his E got a CC duration buff on the Fear, if I'm not mistaken, from 1 flat to 1.5 scaling, which is obviously nice because you max E second. However, he is still so hard to navigate in fights. The problem with Wei is he's pretty easy to lane on. It's not difficult to really understand how to play Wei in lane, but it's very difficult to understand how to play Wei in team fights. He's incredibly hard to do well on, so he's going to stay in the B tier. I think Katarina needs to go down a little bit as well with the Storm Surge nerfs and just the difficulty of actually playing team fights on her at the lower end of the ladder. I don't know if I like keeping her in the A tier. She might be a B tier level champion, which is obviously fantastic. I love a B tier champion. But I just think with Storm Surge being nerfed, she's not as good, and I don't think Rocket Belt is that great on her anymore. You have to run Nashor's Tooth into something, maybe a Lich Bane, and you might be able to get decent results on that because, well, obviously Hourglass and Banshees are better on her as well, but I think I kind of overrated her a little bit. So with the Storm Surge nerfs, I'm going to pull her down. I think Anivia needs to go down a little bit as well. She just doesn't really have any good items on this patch, like at all. You can go Rod of Ages on her into Liandry's, but does that really feel great? And also with the current meta champions being all full range, I don't think she really needs to be that high up on the tier list. Same goes for Cassiopeia. I'm going to pull her down into the C tier as well. I just think I overreacted to how strong I thought she would be with being able to go Archangel's first item into a Liandry's. I thought that would be incredibly strong, but it appears in mid lane the meta is just too difficult for Cassiopeia to really flourish, and she's mainly being played top lane when she is being played. I think Nico needs to go down a little bit as well. I think I overreacted to how strong Nico would be. She is good at the lower end of the ladder. Actually, I might keep her in the A tier. She is good at the lower end of the ladder. You can do a lot of mind games on her, and she plays lane in a very simple manner, which is obviously fantastic. I think Naafiri needs to go up. She got hotfix buffed. She's actually pretty good now as well. Yeah, I think more people should try to play Naafiri. She's just taking the spot over Talon as the best lethality champion on this patch, in my opinion, at least for the lower end of the ladder, just because she's so simple to navigate, right? She's very easy to play. That means, obviously, she's good at lower ends of the ladder, because you can get more value out of her than something like I said, who's incredibly hard to navigate in fights. Even with the set buffs that came in, I don't think he deserves to go higher up on the list either, by the way. Just because he is so hard to navigate. But yeah, Naafiri, she is a lot easier to play than all of these other lethality champions. She has a weak laning phase, but that's fine for the lower end of the ladder. Like I have said, if your champion is weak in lane but scales very well, you're probably good at the lower end of the ladder. Hence why I also have Aurelion Sol up here in the S tier, by the way. Garen got buffed as well, so I think I'm going to slot him back into the A tier. His E got buffed a little bit in terms of the damage dealt, and his W duration for the CC reduction and the damage reduction got buffed as well, which is obviously great. Garen loves this. It is going to be pretty hard for him to navigate the meta currently, with it being Twisted Fate and everything, but I think against certain champions you'll be able to do quite well, and at the lower end of the ladder he is a very simple champion to play, right? So obviously try to pick him up. Oh, and Pantheon. I think Pantheon is just a B tier champion. I think he's not great with lethality right now, so you probably have to play a bruiser variation with Spear of Shojin, but he's not great against the current meta champions either. You lock him in against Corki, it's kind of tough. I might even put Corki up in the S tier, to be honest. I said that this champion was going to be broken on this patch. I wasn't expecting it to be with this build. For any of you that are uninformed, the build on Corki you go currently is you go Manamune first item, then you go Eclipse second item, and then you go Malignance, and then you go other AD items. The idea being that you can get so many Malignance procs off in fights and shred the enemy's magic resist, which is obviously fantastic because, as many of you know, Corki is mainly magic damage, but also because Malignance gives your ult ability haste, which means you just have more rockets now, so you can poke even more. And if you've seen some of the clips from pro play, you will see how obnoxious this damage is. It is crazy. So Corki probably slots into the S tier. But yeah, that's all I have for this tier list, and let me know what you think in the comments, and have a good one, guys. Bye bye.